Hello, and thank you for joining me on this presentation for the Open Doors initiative. In this presentation, I'll really just be exploring some ideas and outlining a skeleton framework for the generation of further ideas and discussion. And it's all around potentially creating an entrepreneurial track or entrepreneurial program within the ODI. The first thing I wanted to look at is funding, because without funding we are restricted on what we can do, obviously. So as part of this initiative, it would be interesting to explore, and I know Jan is already doing this, what other funding opportunities are out there for some of the things that I'll be looking at in this presentation, and how can we align more with them, whether these are Irish funding mechanisms, European Union ones, or ones from other sources. A big question I have also is, what resource does the ODI have to go and research these things? We know that there are huge numbers of sources of funding, but who has the time to actually go and pursue the research to find out which ones might our proposed initiatives be eligible for, and how do we go about securing that? So the question is, could we perhaps second somebody from one of the ODI sponsor companies and dedicate them just to doing this research? I don't know, it's an important question. Similarly, we know that companies and corporates are looking to get more involved in these areas. ODI already has a number of sponsors for it. I think expanding that would be a really good idea. I think accessing the existing networks of corporate social responsibility officers at these large companies could be really good too. I think the sort of things that we are proposing doing in this presentation are the sort of things that many large companies would love to be aligned with. I think it's exceptionally helpful for their brands, and they may be willing to pay for this. And the final point would be, as we get into funding, how, if we do get more sponsor companies on board, how do we want to structure that? Do we want them to just fund ad hoc elements, such as some of the competitions I'm going to talk about, or do we want them to make an ongoing annual commitment, or do we split that up between bronze, silver, gold? Another thing that I want to emphasize on this, and this is before I get into the presentation, this is based on my personal experience. So far, it's only been 6 months, especially in the refugee space. But there are two lines of thought. One is give refugees whatever they need, don't ask them for too much. I'm completely against that when it comes to entrepreneurship. I understand it in many other perspectives, but when it comes to entrepreneurs, they have to be committed. There is a mantra within the entrepreneur community: if it's going to be, it's down to me. That applies to you whether you are a refugee, an inmate, somebody with a disability. It doesn't matter. The market is ruthless. The market doesn't care if you're a refugee, an inmate, former inmate, somebody with a disability. So I think we need to have the same attitude here. People have got to work to move through different levels, and we'll take them more seriously at each of those different levels. But they must qualify themselves, just like an entrepreneur would qualify their own sales funnel in a B2B circumstance in particular. So we will help you, but you have to do the work. This has to be the message going out, setting them tasks to complete. So first you've got to deliver us an elevator pitch. Then you've got to deliver us a business plan without financials. Then we'll give you something. Then you'll come back and you'll give us a business plan with financials. But you're not moving to these different stages until you qualify. And I'll be exploring some other models that seem to have worked in other countries, and they have taken a very similar approach. You must qualify in order to progress. That means you must show that you're putting the work in and deliver a good quality, or else you cannot progress. These are not handouts that we're talking about. Okay, so hopefully that message is clear. Firstly, let's take a look at the refugee situation, and this is one where I where I certainly have more experience than in the other ones. One of the ideas that I've already been floating past the Irish Refugee Council and Business in the Community and some other organisations is the idea of a competition for business plans. One of the big challenges in dealing with refugees is that everybody wants to create another kebab stand or do some more baking. And I don't know how many people have come to me about making cakes. You know, these micro businesses have their place, but really, I think perhaps the standard and the target should be a bit higher than that, or at least we should have supports for both types. I think a competition where people can win money for their startup by submitting business plans and having them evaluated by a panel of mentors could be incredibly effective. There's already templates for this in place. So the Ireland funds, for example, have a business plan competition which is run by the NDRC. I've outlined some of their stuff here. First prize is 10 grand, runner up prizes of 5 grand and 1 grand. We don't have to meet those levels. I think we just need to be seen to be making an effort. If we can only come up with 5 grand in sponsorship funds, well, then that's what it is. But I think taking that first step and putting it out there and pushing it through the media would be really important. And one of the things that I'm emphasizing through this presentation is buzz. We really need a media machine here because we're trying to achieve two things, I think, with the entrepreneurship program. Number one, we're trying to attract people and get them taking this seriously, whether they're refugees or prisoners or something else. The second thing is we're trying to up the standard. So we're really trying to get some people to take this seriously and spend the time, invest the time in putting together a formal business plan, because that is not just a business plan. The creation of the business plan gives them the skills that they will need to really build and scale a business. So, firstly, a competition for the business plans I think would be extremely good start. And the second thing is there's a depressing lack of success stories of refugee entrepreneurs in Ireland. If you go to the Saraim website, I've got some case studies up there, but there's simply not enough. And this is a real missed opportunity. We think there are a lot of successful refugee entrepreneurs in Ireland. We think they are employing Irish people, but that story is not being told, and we need to change that narrative from, well, the refugees coming in here are just costing us all money and taking our tax money, which does exist, and we know that narrative exists. We want to change that to, look, there are refugees coming in here, they're starting their own businesses. Not only are they employing themselves and contributing tax, they're actually employing Irish people. And this is not anecdotal evidence. Here are some actual case studies. More importantly, here are some video case studies where we have videos professionally made and they tell the story of how this all came together. Not only does it change the narrative, but it's there then to inspire other refugee entrepreneurs. There are some other organisations around the world that I'm familiar with who do a really good job on this, but their case studies are all in Germany and the Netherlands and so on. So how do we go about building out these success stories? Again, there are two tracks that I see. Number one, we manually hunt them down one by one. A better way, of course, would be, again, another competition. Really push it hard in the media because it will help to create buzz around this whole area, and it will help then when we do select the winners. And part of the awards that they get not only is the finance, 5k, 10k, whatever it is, but also the exposure for their business and them personally throughout the media. So I'm a huge fan of competitions. I think if they're done right, they can deliver immense bang for the buck. I personally have won a few business competitions over the years, and they have been hugely effective, not just in motivating me, not just in terms of the money that I've got from it, but certainly the media exposure is absolutely fantastic. Let's turn now to prisoners. I've been contacted by somebody from the UK Centre for Entrepreneurs, and actually, I have a call with them 1 hour after I make this presentation. But they have made great strides in what the ODI, I think, might be looking to do. And I've put in a couple of quotes from a report that they've created around entrepreneurship for prisoners. One of the things they emphasize is that entrepreneurship does not discriminate. So even if you've got a criminal record, it doesn't matter. There is no application process for becoming an entrepreneur. Now, one of the things that we have to explore is our prisoners. Do they have any restrictions around limited companies? We can explore that further, but they don't necessarily have to have a limited company. They can operate as a sole trader. So that is something that needs to be explored. But the key thing is here, it's not like applying for jobs. It doesn't matter if you are in your late 50s. If you can create a business and somebody wants your product or service, well, you are up and running. You don't have to go through that whole interview process and potential discrimination. Another interesting insight I saw from the report is that the UK Centre believe the best way of doing it is externally delivering these prison entrepreneurship programs, and they focus it around tailored training, tailored mentoring, and grants for the aspiring prisoner entrepreneurs. So, a couple of key elements that they've already found are useful that we can put in place pretty quickly. So I think there's no point reinventing the wheel here. What I would suggest not doing is creating yet another start your own business course. There are already a myriad of them out there, whether they're online or being delivered by some of the startup organizations. So whether we can get prisoners access to the online ones, or perhaps bring in some of the existing trainers and or just take in their coursework. But I think not reinventing the wheel, focusing our limited resources on other things. For example, one-to-many workshops. A quick example that I can come up with there is around Etsy. If prisoners, for example, are doing woodwork, doing any sort of crafts, if they have any ability to learn those sort of skills, well, we could run a workshop around this is Etsy. This is how you can research Etsy to find out what crafts are people buying, where is the demand, what sort of price point. Well, okay, can you make products of a high quality that can match these ones? If so, maybe you can start selling your products on Etsy overnight. Maybe you have to wait until you get out of prison, I don't know. But also one-to-one mentoring then as well, where we do the group one and help them to do their own research essentially. Then the one-to-one mentoring then help them build up their own actual businesses. The gold standard in prison entrepreneurship seems to come from Texas. They seem to have been at this for a long time and got a really good program together. I love this idea, I must say. They finish off essentially with a mini MBA where prisoners can graduate, and where possible their friends and family can actually attend the graduation ceremony. So I think that is an incredibly motivating task, and something that they can aspire to and work towards over time. Just like my first slide, they have a rigorous selection process. Essentially, they have a sales funnel. So there may be 10,000 candidates each year, but only the top 500 will qualify. That pool is narrowed down even further through an application process and in-person interviews. And then they qualify into a 3-month program known as the Leadership Academy. So you can see anybody who makes it through into this course, that is an immense pat on the back, and that is something that they can be very, very proud of just to get on the course. So this won't be a course for layabouts. This is something with prestige, and something that they can really work towards. So there's a 6-month mini MBA program. We may not be able to get to this level straight away. This may be something to aspire towards. But it does lead on to then the same thing, a business plan competition. And again, that's modeled after the competitions from major US universities. They've got to do a pitch. So it really is about developing these entrepreneurial life skills. And as I say, formal graduation at the end. So I think this is something that we could aspire to. Perhaps this is something that we could use as a framework for an initial program. And what's going on at the moment in Ireland in this space? Not a lot from the research that I can see. One item I did come across in the news was uh, where a businesswoman, popular chef, I can't remember her name right now, it's in Dominique Kemp, has already trialled a similar thing to this PEP in Wheatfield Prison. She later actually recruited one of the former inmates onto one of her own businesses. And also, I saw in 2018 a fund was put in place which was only supporting social enterprises that were founded by former inmates. So, not businesses per se, more social enterprises. So, again, it's something worth exploring. And then, when prisoners move out, well, of course, they're going to need extra supports there. Um, I think here one of the things that would be really strong would be for OGI to work with some of the really aspirational brands. So, helping um, former inmates who have solid business ideas, they've proven their way, they've got something that is has got real potential. We may be talking about one a year here, but to have some way of dovetailing perhaps into some of the existing accelerators, or even to somehow align them or have some sort of educational courses or workshops run by Google or Apple or TikTok. So for these former inmates and entrepreneurs to be able to say to friends and family, yeah, I'm currently getting some work done with Google on my business idea. I think that sort of aspirational element is something that could be really effective. Also, UK Centre for Entrepreneurship, one of their quotes, post release, there should be tailored access to loans for a small subset of the ex offender businesses with genuine growth potential. So, again, here we're talking about the sales funnel. So, the ones who really, really have made it to the very far end of the funnel, well, we need to have some prizes waiting for them there. What sort of resources are required? I think the first step would be a pool of startup experts that can serve as panels for the competitions and for the mentoring as well. Obviously, I can't do all of this on my own, but I'm certainly willing to do a lot. I can also pull together additional people, both from the Institute of Directors, because I'm a chartered director, and perhaps from Enterprise Ireland, because I'm a mentor on Enterprise Ireland's panel. We need to know where the money is coming from for some of these sort of things. We need to make sure that we have a strong media machine in place. I really think this will all fall apart if we can't create not just a one off buzz, but a consistent month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year buzz, and really change the narrative to build up some momentum behind this. And then, as I've mentioned, partnerships with the startup heavy hitters, getting some really strong names in here to get the message out there. This is not Mickey Mouse. This is not us just throwing some breadcrumbs and saying, oh, the poor refugees, let's give them something to make ourselves feel good. I'm talking about something that is really gold standard, really something that they can aspire towards. How many times have I used the word aspire in this presentation? I think this is what we need to focus on. And then making sure as well that we do have some resource commitments from partners. I see HubSpot, for example, are one of the sponsors. I love HubSpot's technology. I think getting some free licenses for people who qualify, not for everybody, but things like that, maybe access to some of Google's cool business technology, maybe Microsoft can come on board as well. But having some of these, HubSpot I particularly love because you want to build your site on the HubSpot platform. So before you even build a website, you need to have the HubSpot license before you even start doing all of your social media stuff. It's better to have HubSpot already in place. So having that at the core, maybe getting some free HubSpot training, again for a select few, could be really helpful. And then people with disabilities. There's not a lot going on around the world from what I can see in terms of support for entrepreneurs with disabilities. I have, unsurprisingly, come across some work in Canada. So British Columbia and Manitoba and some of the other places do have this Entrepreneurs with Disabilities program. It doesn't look particularly different to the regular supports that are already in place for people without disabilities. However, it is essentially workshops, mentoring, and so on. I think one of the biggest challenges is to find a way that entrepreneurs with disabilities don't lose their existing benefits once they start trying to do something new. So even if they try out something as a side gig, we want to make sure that they're not losing their existing income. And if they are, we would need to find some way of subsidizing it. I think then for people with disabilities, look, the Canadian programs mainly focus on mentoring. In some individual instances, state by state, they can provide access to loans with preferential terms. We could look at that, possibly teaming up with some other organisations that have already done it. Um, but I think the focus really for this group initially should be around mentoring and perhaps some workshops. Maybe try to get the other two initiatives up and running first before doing a full deep dive into this one. So thank you for your time. This was just an exploratory one. I hope it's given some ideas. Really, we want to just talk about this further. Most of what I wanted to do was to just raise some questions, give my perspective, and hopefully get some completely opposing perspectives so that we can eventually come up with a creative solution. If you want to get in touch with me, here's my email address and my organisation, Saram's website as well, where you'll find some case studies on entrepreneur refugees in Ireland. Thank you. Look forward to talking to you soon.